All right. Where are we? Here we go. Okay. So I should be sharing.
Yes.
All right. So I realized I had an Agile Hartford graphic here. So at the last second, I kind of popped on the Agile Rhode Island graphic. So we're all good. So we're going to talk about Disciplined Agile tonight and how we intended to think about it, coming at it from traditional roles. As an Agile coach, what does Disciplined Agile mean to me? As a product owner, what does it mean to me? As a portfolio lead, what does it mean to me? And how can I apply what it's espousing? So DA is, as you know, PMI's advocated Agile method, but it's actually more of a toolkit. PMI bought the Disciplined Agile assets just about 3-4 years ago. And since then, they've been continually refining it. Their offerings have been updated in the past few months. So I'm going to take you through some of those updated offerings that are available for public use. So we'll talk a little history about DA. How can I get started on DA? And also, very importantly, how is it the same and maybe different from other Agile methods, both at team and scale levels? I'd encourage you, it's a small group, and that's totally cool. I'd love to hear from you guys as we go through this, and feel free to share your perspective. I know many of you, this is probably the first time you're hearing about DA, or you may have heard some things in the past about it, and it's evolved considerably from its first inception. So with that, here we go. Page down. There we go. All right. So a little bit about me. As Barbara said, I've been around for about 20 years, and you know, I remember the last time the Mets were in the World Series, which wasn't all that long ago, which is good. But I do have over 20 years in Agile methods. I actually started in 1999 when I was with Adidas America, and we started with feature-driven development. The manifesto hadn't really been formed at that point, but we were doing very distinct features for the Adidas customers, soliciting feedback as we went, and we continue to build out a customer-enabled web system where they could look up purchase orders, place orders, really any business function that customers needed to do and interface with the Adidas customer service. We kind of automated, put it out online for all the consumers out there. So since then, as I said, I was in San Antonio for about 9 years working with the USAA on their Agile transformation. I will tell you that third time is lucky. First 2 times it didn't stick for various reasons, and I'm sure I see a lot of head nodding. So you guys know what I'm talking about. It takes a while to get the organization kind of accepting of Agile process and practice. Since then, I went to consulting, worked at several financial services organizations, in healthcare, and now I'm working in the pharma space with a company looking to adopt Agile process and practice. As Barbara said too, I am the founder and kind of studio president of Agile Hartford. We've been around, we just had our 6-year anniversary, and really enjoy that, bringing in speakers, and always happy to collaborate with Agile Rhode Island. And it's great to be here, and I really appreciate you guys having me. So, quick blurb on Agile Hartford, agilehartford.org. All our good stuff's out there, how to reach us. Again, always happy to partner. So here's our agenda. We'll talk about the current state of Agile. What does it look like? What are you guys seeing? How are we doing 20 years after the manifesto? We'll take a dive into Disciplined Agile, the definition and the origins of DA. And I'll cover the 5 steps to start the Disciplined Agile adoption. So we'll spend the bulk of our time here, and I'll show you the tools that are available free online from PMI's website, and more importantly, how you're intended to use them. There's a lot of information. It could be quite overwhelming, but I will go through the 5 steps. And if you're interested, I would definitely recommend trying to follow that path, and you'll see the form and function of DA as you go forward. And we'll touch on additional resources like certifications, books, and those types of things if you'd like more information. So the current state of Agile, So I'm sure some of you guys have seen this Agile Landscape version 3. The kind of overarching theme is that Agile has lost its agility. And you see that hashtag, I've seen it around LinkedIn and other places, freedom, not frameworks. So there's definitely a pushback against all of the kind of the Agile bureaucracy, they're calling it. SAFe especially is certainly getting a lot of flack for how much process it puts in place, even though it builds itself as a framework. Those of you that are familiar with SAFe know it's evolved considerably since version 1.0, when Dean Leffingwell put out the first book on it. And it's become far more complex, many different models. And as you see, just going through this, there's all kinds of methods, there's all kinds of practices and processes. But they don't really talk a lot about the mindset and agility with a big A as a whole. How can we approach what we need to do with an Agile mindset? But on top of that too, and I've certainly seen this, and I bet I'd see some head nods out here too, what's the right Agile method for your enterprise program or team? And how do you decide that? I know going through several adoptions that there's always one overarching Agile method that a company becomes enamored with, and everyone must do that method. USAA, it was Scrum. We were doing Scrum, period. Part of the reason I left USAA was because I was teaching SAFe. I was the only SPC at USAA, and teams were asking me about SAFe, how they could learn about SAFe. That did not go over well because we did Scrum. We only did Scrum. Scrum's perfectly applicable in every single situation, and that's all we need to do. You can guess how that turned out, right? Now they're a big SAFe shop. Anyway, the point being, context really does matter when you're talking about Agile in enterprises, in programs, and even in teams. The context is absolutely critical. One principle that DA absolutely espouses is context matters. One thing I learned from just talking to someone at PMI that's kind of front and center with DA is Disciplined Agile was originally created by Scott Ambler and Mark Lyons at IBM. And Scott Ambler used to go around to other large companies and help teams and portfolios with their conversion from waterfall to Agile. And he thought he had this kind of cookie cutter method to help everyone along. But what he realized was everyone had different contexts, and he wasn't comfortable telling them all the same thing. So he kind of shifted his thinking to build Disciplined Agile around outcomes rather than put in the framework. The outcome mattered, the context mattered, and that was critical to Scott's thinking, and it's in the DNA of Disciplined Agile, as we will see in the next upcoming slides. So does this resonate with people? Have we seen oh, we're doing SAFe, everyone must do SAFe, here comes the SAFe hammer, we're good, right? Yeah, very common theme. So context really does matter. On top of that though, and we certainly experienced this at USAA and other organizations, even if you put in Scrum, which of course is the most widely used Agile method in practice today, always has been, but adaptive methods have blind spots, right? What does Scrum tell you to do with architecture? How do you do documentation? How do you test? That was always a big question. How do you test in Scrum? I didn't always have a good answer, but I had to go back to the principles and try to figure something out. So adaptive methods don't really give you everything you need to know or give you choices on things to select from. So, and what happens when you put in a method like Scrum and you don't know what to do with testing? You fall back on the way you used to do things. And now you've got water Scrum, right? Or Scrum or Fall, or some bizarre hybrid of traditional methods and Agile methods that don't really quite have the same resonance and don't have the impact that you anticipated that they would. So adaptive methods do have their blind spots. They can be challenging as well. So that's another challenge with where we are today. So what is Disciplined Agile? Officially, Disciplined Agile is a people-first, learning-oriented hybrid agile approach to IT solution delivery. I don't really know what that means, to be honest. That's a lot of words. It's a lot of word salad, but the devil's in the details, and we're going to get through that. Overall, though, PMI advocates Disciplined Agile as a process decision toolkit. It is not a framework. They're very adamant about that. So when you talk about, well, should we do Disciplined Agile or should we look at SAFe? They're two different things. You can do Disciplined Agile in a safe environment. It's a toolkit. You're meant to draw from it what you need and leave what you don't. Now, how that works in form and function, we'll get into more, but PMI is very specific about this is not a framework. Don't call it a framework. So, but as a toolkit, you need to understand how to use the tools at your disposal. What teams or organizations are meant to do is really choose their own way of working. But what they do is they leverage process and practice from proven agile methods. So like using user story voice is a choice, not a demand. So that's the DA toolkit in a nutshell. It's not DA versus SAFe, it's DA and whatever else. Or you can start with DA as well and evolve to use additional process frameworks if you choose to. A little more on the history. Some of you may recognize this book. It was a giveaway at one of the Agile conferences, back in the early 2010s. It was first published in 2012, and the merger happened in August 2019. Now, Disciplined Agile says that they merged with PMI. PMI, as you can imagine, says they bought DA. So maybe this marriage is off to a rocky start. Just gonna say, they saw it as a partnership of equals. DA did, anyway. There are certifications for Disciplined Agile that go beyond the PMI ACP, which some of you may be familiar with or have that certification. The ACP was a kind of a little bit of a generic, cover 3 or 4 or 5 Agile methods, process and practice, roles and stuff. But there are specific Disciplined Agile certifications available to you. DA Scrum Master, DA Senior Scrum Master, DA Value Stream Coach, and DA Coach. So, little history on Disciplined Agile. So since August 2019, PMI has been evolving the Disciplined Agile toolkit and marketing the DA toolkit and trying to make it more consumable. Okay, we're going into the Disciplined Agile overview now. So we're starting at the top. If you go to PMI's website under Disciplined Agile, you'll be confronted with this chevron chart. I'm going to help you make some sense of this. What you see on each of these chevrons, these are called process blades. Disciplined Agile is the term for the entirety of the enterprise. You see here, Disciplined Agile Enterprise is bounded in purple. Everything in this box refers to the Disciplined Agile Enterprise. I want to make the distinction. Disciplined Agile Delivery is the software delivery component of Disciplined Agile. They need to change that term, and I've told them that several times because it's just confusing. We're going to spend our time here on Disciplined Agile Delivery, on the software delivery component of it, but understand that DA as a whole builds itself as an enterprise toolkit. So that said, each of these purple things, well, each of these chevrons are called process blades. Now, on a server farm, if you have a hard drive that's failing, you swap it out, you're changing blades, right? Each hard drive itself is a blade. The inference here is each of these process blades have their own rhythms and routines under Disciplined Agile. They may interface with each other depending on where they sit in the organization. But again, we're going to focus our time down here on Disciplined Agile Delivery. You also see that they support the value stream concept here. Value stream integrates the disciplined DevOps layer with more of a value stream chevrons and process blades that you see here. Then you scroll up to the enterprise. Now, there are foundational elements to Disciplined Agile that I want to dive into. So we're going to look at the principles, the promises, and the guidelines. And we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about Disciplined Agile delivery, the software delivery component of DA. Okay, let me pause there. Okay, so far, I know this is probably a little confusing diagram, but this is how PMI is advocating. So far, so good? Okay, I promise it gets better. This is kind of the most confusing aspect of it. So let's look at the foundation. So you know in SAFe and you know in Agile, we have the principles. SAFe has its own set of principles. In the foundation layer for DA, they have principles, promises, and guidelines. Now, what I think is somewhat unique about the DA mindset is under principles, you see the third one there, context counts. No other Agile framework says that. So DA is very overt about context being an underpinning principle of how they approach things. And tied to that, be pragmatic, do what makes sense. Again, another one that you just don't see very, very commonly in other Agile methods. And choice is good. They celebrate choice. So you can see how they're opening up DA and trying to keep that big A agility front and center in DA. On promises, creating psychological safety and embracing diversity. So they promise to do that. So I've been in many organizations where we don't have psychological safety. People are afraid to speak up. DA is very overt about that as well, creating psychological safety. We promise to create psychological safety. Some of the other ones you see are fairly common: accelerate value delivery, collaboration, make work visible, common ones you've seen before. And we follow these guidelines, create effective environments that foster joy. Again, very overt about the psychological safety, teaming, collaboration aspects through DA. So kind of a long list, principles, promises, and guidelines. But DA, it's all very purposeful with DA. It really takes the Agile principles, the SAFe principles, and kind of blows them out even further. Context counts, and let's make sure we're treating our people where they feel they can speak up. So I really like that about it. So something that's a little different. Adopt measures to improve outcomes. Again, outcome-based. That's our primary driver. Okay, getting started with Disciplined Agile delivery. So if you're interested in adopting Agile, maybe taking some tentative steps with Agile, Disciplined Agile delivery is a good place to start. If your organization is maybe struggling with Scaled Agile or any other Agile methods, I think Disciplined Agile can help you, and again, with freely available tools. So we'll talk about how to get started with DA next. Here are the 5 steps. How to choose your way of working. Analyze context, select a life cycle, connect the dots and make some choices, and then commit to practicing continuous improvement. In DA, as you go through the first 4 steps, connecting the dots and making choices, continuous improvement is about not just let's adopt some other Agile practices and processes, but let's revisit the ones we have, because maybe things have changed, maybe the context changed, and we should change some of those choices we've made. So DA says, if you need to change your choices sprint to sprint, quarter to quarter, based on your context, that's okay. So again, kind of opening things up for you, knowing that context matters. The only certainty is change. We're going to go through each of these steps, and I'll do my best to explain them and show you on PMI's website where you can get more information on these. Number 1, analyzing your context. So as we talked about, context is important with Disciplined Agile. They have these spider charts available that you can go through to help understand what risks you have based on those complexities and how you might mitigate those risks. So this spider diagram kind of plots out several factors where you kind of see where your team or program lies, which should help inform you as to your life cycle choice. So just for example, I'm showing two teams. The Hamburg Helpers, they're located in Germany. It's a really bad joke, I know, I'm sorry. And then I have Santana's Elves. So the Hamburg Helpers, they have a small team. It's a somewhat complex domain, but everyone's in the same building. They come from a single organization. Everyone's available. Some internal oversight, nothing really critical as far as compliance goes. We're dealing with a legacy solution. So low on the risk and complexity scale. Then we have Santana's Elves over here where, you know what, we've got a globally distributed team. There's about 100 individuals working on this in this program. It's a complex domain. It's a new integrated solution with regulatory oversight, with very specific skills that are difficult to acquire. And oh, by the way, we're using third-party resources. So, which what I've seen in pharma and some other big spaces, this is pretty much the operating model with these large companies, especially using third-party resources, global distribution, and we're dealing with complex environments, and we're dealing with maybe custom software or dealing with custom software. So yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult skill set for maintenance and such. So obviously choosing one particular agile method, even at scale, seems like it would be difficult to have each of these teams under that one method, right? So we have our spider chart, we have our risk and complexity. Then the next thing we would do is, well, let's look at our best fit life cycle based on our context. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about these, and I'm going to jump out to PMI's site and show you where you can find a little more detail. So DA advocates for these 6 life cycle choices. They call it the Agile life cycle, which is effectively Scrum, the Lean life cycle, which is Kanban, continuous delivery Agile life cycle, and continuous delivery Lean life cycle, which are basically continuous delivery Scrum, continuous delivery Kanban, if you can operate in that environment. They want exploratory life cycle, which is a lean startup type cycle, which is interesting. I hadn't seen that one before either. And then they have a program life cycle, which is basically at scale. What I want to point out before I jump out to PMI's site is, and I found this really interesting. This is the Agile life cycle right here, which is Scrum based. Now, I want you to look over here. They're acknowledging that many large organizations still have this kind of waterfallish phasing that they do. So the Agile life cycle has an inception phase, right? Sort of like a sprint zero, sort of, a construction phase, and a transition phase, right? We're going to production. Now in Agile, of course, we may execute these phases multiple times throughout the duration of a project, but DA is acknowledging that, yeah, there is a startup period. There's also a transition period where we're going live, and in the middle, we're doing our construction work. The difference between the Agile and Lean life cycle and the CD life cycle is there's no inception or transition phase in the continuous delivery cycle. That matters for the next step. So I wanted to make sure I explain that one. So again, DA does advocate that you do have 3 phases, generally speaking, inception, construction, and transition, unless you're in a CD environment, in which case it's only construction. What I'm going to do now is just jump out to PMI's website and just show you, here's a view on the full delivery life cycle. Again, it's freely available. It's out there on PMI's site. They talk about the inception, construction, and transition phases and why they did that. Yeah, phases, really? So yeah, they have to defend themselves for making that suggestion. But then down here, and these links to down below, you can see all of the life cycles and the expectations about them. You can click to expand those. Here's the lean life cycle with, you see the 3 phases there as well. And here's the CD Agile phase, just construction. All the way down on the bottom of the page, there's posters for these life cycles. So if you need to put something on your wall and you love Disciplined Agile, feel free to take one of these posters and just pop them up there. This page has changed since I last gave this presentation, which was about 4 or 5 months ago. They used to say that you can use DA with waterfall. Now, I had a question about that last time I gave this presentation. I believe you still can do that, but DA explicitly said that we really don't support waterfall anymore, not for DA. So interestingly enough, they're saying, and it's PMI, they're saying we don't really want to support waterfall with DA. So that is PMI's position on waterfall, oddly enough. Let me pause there. Questions on lifecycle choices? Find it interesting? Yeah, it's a little different. Okay. Let's see. So moving on. So, go ahead.
Quick question. So say you pick a certain life cycle choice. If like, how long do you give it before you maybe come to realize, oh, we should have picked a different one, or you know, like, is there a prescriptive amount of time there?
There is not a prescriptive amount of time. When I go through the next section, Rob, I think you'll get some sense of, oh, maybe we can kind of change things here.
Okay.
I'd say that it's meant to be continually improved and adjusted in that way. So no, there's no prescription on, you know, by this point, commit or bail out, you know.
Right.
Not like that. But let's maybe look at that question again at the end once we go through some of these other things.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a fair question though. Okay, so let me ask, and you can put this in the chat or shout it out. What life cycle choice do you think the Hamburg helpers should go with? Don't be shy, put it in the chat, shout it out. There's no real wrong answer, guys, so just humor me, pick something.
I was going to say continuous delivery, Agile life cycle. Can't type fast enough.
Yeah, that could be a good choice, sure. Continuous delivery, lean life cycle, yeah, I think we have consensus, and that's fair. And you know, based on their context, which we don't quite, you know, have a full handle on, if they have an environment where they could do CD, yeah, that would be great. Maybe if they don't, they may have to fall back into the Agile life cycle. But nonetheless, you know, we have a starting point, which is the important part here. How about the Santana Zells, the big hairy global project with third party? What do you think? Possibly exploratory, maybe early on. Yeah, maybe. It's got a lot of risk out there. Any other thoughts? Program. Yeah, it feels like a scale. We got 100 people, we got a lot of risk. Maybe we do need to do exploratory early and move into program. Again, we're going to make choices based on what we know today, but the point of this is you can see that what works for a help desk group in Germany isn't necessarily the best choice for a global distributed project with third party. Initial exploratory life cycle, yeah. Another way to mitigate risk, right? Go through that exploratory phase. Sure. Yeah, good job, guys. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on. So again, I wanted to stress, remember, conception, construction, transition. versus continuous delivery, which is just construction. Why does that matter? Because we're going to the third step. And the third step is connect the dots and make choices. What does that mean? Here we go. Okay, this is a process diagram. Now, what I'd say is we need to, sorry, just checking things real quick. These are process goals. Each of these things laid out is a process goal. In the inception phase, getting the team going in the right direction, here are the process goals associated with that inception phase. And transition, similarly, here are the process goals of the transition phase. Now, if you're doing continuous delivery, you don't have these process goals. You may choose to add them in, but if you're just doing construction continuous delivery, your process goals are primarily focused in this area. That's the difference. That's why I say, remember, inception, construction, transition versus just construction, because they align the process goals in DA against the phase that you're in. Now, tied to that too, though, realize is ongoing. It doesn't matter what life cycle you pick, because these are things that need to be done anyway. These are process goals that you should always factor no matter what you're doing. And it makes sense. Evolving your way of working, intake work, metrics, addressing risk, govern your team, measure outcomes. Don't matter what life cycle you pick. Those are all goals that you should take a look at. Okay. So what we're meant to do is, at a start, we don't necessarily need to identify every process goal off the bat. If we're starting up a new team, we should pick what's critical to us right now that can get us going in the right direction and work each of these individually. Or if we choose to work in collectively, we could do that too, based on how risky we feel these process goals might be. What do I mean by that? So let's take a deeper dive. We're going to look at explore scope. We're in inception phase. Let's look at some options for explore scope. We'll also take a look at intake work, which is part of the ongoing process goal. What I'm going to do here, though, I'm going to jump out and go to the PMI browser. And Doug, I think that was you that put the link in the chat. If you want to do that again, here we go. So here's the DA browser. This is freely available. A lot of good information out here, but this is how you would go about choosing your way of working. If I'm in the browser, so I clicked on, just to double check it. Here we go. Okay. What did I say? Oh, explore scope. Here we go. Here's the explore scope process goal. Here are the factors I should consider and the choices that I should make. Now, what's good about this in the browser is it talks about why it's important, why the explore scope process goal is important, key points. If I want to look at explore user experience, for example, I can click it and it shows me, it gives me a little bit of an understanding of what it's all about. But what's different and unique here is it talks about the options under explore the user experience. Here are the options, a design sprint. Here are the trade-offs in selecting this. Now here's the rest of the options you see here. UI flow diagram. What is it? What are the trade-offs in using it? Prototyping, a high fidelity, a low fidelity prototype, UI specifications. So your choices are here. In the browser, realize that what's in bold is kind of the preferred method, the preferred choice. But again, you're meant to make choices based on the options available to you. So let me sum this real quick. In inception, we have a process goal of explore the scope. Under explore scope, we want to explore the user experience. We come into the browser and say, what options do we have? And what are the trade-offs of each of those as well? So to help inform my choice. Let me pause there a sec. Questions on this? What about impressions? What do you guys think about going through this process as a way to select your choose your own adventure kind of path to agility? This is a great amount of information, Barb. Yeah, totally agree.
I think it's often a challenge to get pretty much any organization to say, like you were saying, we have different teams working different ways, but to get an organization to say, oh, people can do things differently. There's so much of, I heard the word playbook used often, right? So at a certain company, this is a playbook. This is what the definitions mean. We're now going to, maybe we'll have Kanban for like a service team, but, that's about the biggest difference. Yeah. So it can be a challenge, just the adoption of allowing people to have that flexibility.
I totally agree, Doug. I mean, I think if you don't have very many choices, that can be bad. If you have too many choices, that's not necessarily better. Not necessarily better. So let me kind of just run through another one. We did that. Let's look at intake work just to see what we got. So ongoing, I'm going to go to intake work and look at my choices. Consider new work, accept new work. Let's look at who prioritizes the work. And here's the options available to us. Ideally, it's the product owner, which is why it's at the top of the list. But, and I've absolutely seen this, the business analyst. Every large organization I've been in, the BA often steps in as the pseudo product owner. DA saying that's okay. You may want to capture that as your way of working and formalize it and have that agreement that, hey, our business analyst is going to prioritize the work. That's our way of working. Okay. DA is fine with that. Other things, obviously, other choices, product manager, change control board, active stakeholder participation, which you can imagine could get kind of ugly if there's a lot of stakeholders. Architecture owner, I've seen an architecture owner be the product owner, especially on infrastructure type projects, and it works really well. On-site customer, and then the last option is the team. But again, looking down the list, we see the options and the trade-offs of doing so. So I think, again, you can see how it's a toolkit. PMI says that anyone can use DA and you don't need coaching. Just go get trained and you can. The inference is the Disciplined Agile Scrum Master can lead an organization in this type of adoption of DA. I would argue that it requires a pretty extensive amount of knowledge, not just to know that there's choices and trade-offs, but how can they best be applied in this situation? If we're coming in and we don't know Agile and we're looking at this, we might think that, oh, we have a change control board, let's just do that. Well, that's not really the best choice. And the best choice is the product owner or maybe active stakeholder participation. But organizations can fall back and I think validate where they are and what they are right now and just say, well, DA said we're fine because our way of working is actually captured through the toolkit. So it can be an excuse, is my concern. And I think that's the value coaching brings as to you really should have a product owner do this. I would encourage you to take this path instead. So that said, is there a question? Oh, Rachel said, how many Agile teams have BAs? I know in pharma, at least 75% of them. And we're not talking one or two, we're talking 30, 40. And most of the BAs are actually pseudo product owners by proxy.
I have a question, Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's a two-pointer question, but I'll ask the easy one first. So I have a big Scrum team. So I have 20 plus members, excluding the product owner, myself, and the senior Scrum Master leading the big team. So I don't know. So one of the challenges is the stand up. So we have like a half an hour stand up. So so everybody has to get at least a minute or a minute and a half. So that's one of the challenges. But I'm just trying to brainstorm. Even if I split the team into 2 teams, I don't see really a benefit, because I still have to repeat this stand up. Separate event for stand up, separate event for refinement, grooming. So the overall time is still going to remain the same or even more if I split it. So I don't see a big advantage of splitting the team. But the challenge is during the stand up, where I got to complete between 15 minutes to half an hour. Do you have any thoughts and suggestions there, and how I better run the stand up with a big team?
Yeah, I guess I'd open it up to the group as well. I've seen that model before, and I know from like a DA perspective, DA wouldn't say that that's a problem, because you would choose your way of working and make the decision that we're going to have longer stand-ups. That's what we choose to do. I think though, for Scrum, if you're trying to get the most value out of it, the devil's in the details. Be very clear with what information people should share and what they shouldn't share. And yeah, maybe trying to hold people to 1 minute may get the most value out of that stand up. That's what I've seen.
Okay, thank you.
Chime in?
Yeah. Thank you. So the other thing is the second part I have is this. I don't know if it's a mindset thing or we have like 3 weeks iteration cycle, and in spite of having the 3-week iteration cycle, I see still carryovers. The carryovers is more than 50%, like sprint over sprint. It's been. This is my first sprint with the team, but I see that pattern. Just curious to find out any thoughts and tips to how do I break the pattern in terms of the carryovers. One thought which is running in my brain is limit the work in flow, but when I ask the team, like everything they think everything is important, and they need to bring everything to the sprint. So which is why I think is one of the reasons where I see the spillover happening. But any thoughts and tricks, so how to better educate and enlighten them?
So I can give you some, we're kind of way off topic, but I can give you a quick, here's what I consider. Shorten the Scrum cycle to a week. Force them to show you something at the end of a week. They say if you're doing delivery in 3 weeks, make it shorter, not longer.
So your suggestion is okay. So your suggestion is to shorten the sprint cycle from 3 weeks to 2 weeks, and then see how that's going to help, is what you're trying to suggest?
You're trying to get them to show something, right? It sounds like the team is trying to deliver something to complete. That's not really the goal. The goal is to get something out there so we can get feedback.
Okay.
Show something working. That's more important. Completeness is not the goal. Show the product under something working.
Okay.
So let's jump back into the topic and finish this up, and then we'll continue on with questions. That's okay?
Sorry, I interjected. Sorry, my bad. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, any questions on the DA browser? If not, let's press on. Okay, we are almost done. So we're choosing our way of working, and then we just practice continuous improvement from there. We should retrospect, look at the choices we've made, see if our context has changed, and adjust. That's the last step, practice continuous improvement. So to wrap up, some pros and cons of Disciplined Agile. So interested in your thoughts as well. Some pros, it's context-driven and enterprise-aware, which I really like. It's not one-size-fits-all. I think that's a real benefit to it. It incorporates proven Agile methods. So it's not DA or Scrum, it's Scrum and DA. It doesn't require extensive role training. That's what PMI is suggesting. It's a toolkit, not a framework, meant to draw from the toolkit. And it augments Agile frameworks, it doesn't compete with them. Some drawbacks, though, as you saw from the browser, the process goals and the choices can be pretty overwhelming and tedious and time consuming. There's a lot there. As Barbara, as you said, there's a lot of information. It's difficult for organizations with low agile maturity to make good choices. That gets back to, I wouldn't do this without a coach or someone well-versed in agile process and practice to know what is a good choice and what is going to impede you down the road. Another one is significant variation in roles and responsibilities across an org. So if we look at our Hamburg helpers and Santana Dells, if I take the Scrum Masters from each of those teams or programs, they're going to have very different experiences because their way of working is different. So I can't interchange them. You can't plug and play a Scrum Master here. You have someone that has a different way of working that's unique to that team or program. So I'd say that's a little bit of a con. HR would probably agree with me because it's harder to kind of have a job description if you're evolving your way of working continually. Do you guys have thoughts on pros and cons based on what you've seen? Put it in the chat or shout it out. If not, I'll tell you what, we'll just finish up and then we'll go to questions and we can certainly talk more there as well. So the DA learning journey, and I think this, yeah, 2 slides left and we're good. So the learning journey, so PMI ACP, many of you are probably familiar with, anyone can take the exam. They say you just should have like year in Agile experience. The ACP has been around a good 10 years or so at this point. The DA Scrum Master is really the next step. You don't need much Agile experience either. You can actually come in and just take this. You don't need the ACP. It's not a prerequisite. It gives you the basics of the toolkit and how to use it. So a lot of what we kind of covered here, you'll find in the DASM. The DA Senior Scrum Master, I'd say, is different. I didn't find it as valuable as the DASM for this reason. The DASSM talks about a lot of the soft skills around teaming, conflict resolution, working with people on their journey, creating psychological safety. So if that's of more interest, the Senior Scrum Master carries a lot more that type of interaction versus the DASM, which is very toolkit focused. So some of the advanced degrees are the DA Coach requires 3 years of experience in the Senior Scrum Master certification. And the Value Stream Consultant, similarly, you have to be a DA Coach to be a Value Stream Consultant. Now, the DASM and DASSM are available on demand. I believe the course is about $400, something like that. You can launch it at any time and take the exam, and you can get certified in DASM or DASSM. The Coach and Value Stream Consultant, I believe, require an in-person, either fully or at least partially. So if you have interest, I'd encourage you, look at the DASM certification. Covers a lot of what we did here. Maybe give you a little bit of a deeper understanding in some of the areas we didn't take a dive into tonight. More information. So Choose Your Wow. So this is the book. Choose Your Wow. Choose Your Way of Working. It's on Amazon. The 2020 edition, obviously it's evolved a lot since that pamphlet came out in 2012. PMI has their own website on it. You can find more. There's a LinkedIn group for DA. And also we look at the DA browser itself, which is new from PMI. So you can kind of make those connections, make your choices, and evolve your way of working. And that said, that is the end of the presentation. So interested in your thoughts, questions, anything you want to talk about with regards to DA?
Can you give us some maybe real world examples or using it where you are now? You know, other places that you know are using it and challenges? Yeah.
Doug, that's $1 million question. I haven't personally seen DA put in use. I will say though that it's a bit challenging in that companies and organizations don't say, oh, we're doing Disciplined Agile, because it's meant to be a toolkit. What I'm doing right now, and I'm in a kind of, pharma is kind of a squishy space with Agile. They want to say they do it, but they don't really want to do it. So I'm looking to see if I can take some process goals and get some feedback to say, hey, can we agree on this process goal? Do we want to try to have this experience? Because I'd like to introduce some of these techniques. So that's how I, as a coach, would look to kind of work it in. But I'd still, to your point though, Doug, I don't know if I'd say like, oh, hey, here's a DA success story, right? Again, because it's very much a toolkit that you're meant to draw from. I can see doing DA under the covers where the organization doesn't even know they're doing DA, or overtly as, yeah, let's go after DA. So you can see that's a bit of a challenging question, but I'd say the LinkedIn group, I see that question out there every now and then. That might be a good resource to say, what else you got for me? I know SAFE's got white papers and such. I think DA is evolving in that direction to kind of get some of their own marketing spun up, but it's still in its infancy. There's still a lot of challenges with the DA toolkit that they're working through, certifications, naming. It's evolving. It's evolving its own way of working. What language is the book available? I honestly don't know. You can check Amazon for it. They may have international version. PMI is an international organization, so I've got to believe that they'd have other languages available. If you take the DASM class, you get a PDF of it. I'm not sure if you get your choice of language. That's a fair question. I gotta believe PMI has international versions.
Doug, I have a question.
Mhm.
So this discipline, as in Agile, is kind of new to me. Sorry, I've joined in between the sessions. Just trying to understand what is the best kind of what do you call the industry to apply this, or what kind of ecosystems we can experiment this, because a lot of organizations, they're already following either Scrum or Kanban, or if at the program and portfolio level, they're already using SAFe. So what's the best business case for this adoption, driving this adoption for this discipline Agile? What are the industries, or what are the kind of projects or programs we can apply this? Maybe I missed that slide. So
wait, let me revisit this one. DA doesn't really have like a specific context in mind. You're meant to figure out your context and make a choice as to which life cycles work best for you. Now, I'd say that Scrum and Kanban are here as our continuous delivery, but they also say lean startup. If you're working in like a lean startup type environment, regardless of the product you're evolving, that's an opportunity, and scale is obviously still there as well. But also DA doesn't compete with Scrum or Kanban or SAFe or any of those. It's meant to augment the existing Agile methods, whatever might be in place. So I can't say there's a specific industry for it. I'd say any industry that's using Agile could potentially benefit from using options from the DA toolkit.
So you're saying, if I understand you correctly, this is another alternative to Scrum, Kanban, XP kind of Agile methods?
I wouldn't say it's an alternative. I wouldn't say that. PMI wouldn't say that either. It augments Scrum or Kanban or SAFe or any of them. So real quick, let me just show you that it's goal driven, right? It's outcome driven. So if you're choosing your way of working, you're meant to select what goals you have interest in controlling, putting methods or practices in place to do things, like intake work, for example. DA would say, here's choices on how to intake work. Some are more Scrum-like, some might be more Kanban-like, some may be neither. But you're meant to choose a goal and find a strategy to address that goal, independent of Agile method. So it's different. It's not a framework. It's probably the best answer I can give you.
Okay. Yeah, I think I need to explore a little bit more, but thank you for responding.
Sure. Other questions? How are we on time, Barbara?
We're good. We're perfect, actually. I was gonna just make a comment, I think, more than anything. It's funny, it's called Disciplined Agile, but it's almost not disciplined.
There's a branding problem for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a ton of information here. It's almost when you first pulled up that toolkit, it seemed like it was going to be very prescriptive. But
Yeah.
then it also communicates there's flexibility to have a lot of choices, and then you can kind of slice and dice it any which way you want. So it's just an interesting model, I guess, right? It kind of covers everything in the kitchen sink.
Yeah, it's very different from what we're used to seeing
Mm.
as coaches or practitioners. Agreed.
Right. It's just, yeah, not prescriptive. I feel like it's like a shopping cart almost. You know,
It's
you
a
just
choose
go
your
through
own
each, and yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Shopping cart, yeah, that's a good way to think of it too. I'll take this, I'll try that, and see if it works. So you can see it requires a lot of kind of thought capital, right? It's like, okay, let me really think about this, what makes sense, and go through that process of what's the trade-off if I pick, customer value, how could that affect me?
Mhm.
So a lot to it, but you're not meant to address every process goal. Pick out what's important to you and work that way. Evolve your way of working, right? That's their big catchphrase.
Right. I agree with Rob. I like this tool.
It makes life a lot easier to
Right.
do. It's in the book, but it's hard to thumb through it and everything. And this is a really nice enhancement they just put out.
Yep.
Anything else? Well, I hope you found this informative. That was my intent, was just to kind of inform you, let you know this is out here. Not saying it's good, bad, and different. I think it's really interesting that PMI is taking this approach after pushing back on Agile for so long. Now they purchased DA, Disciplined Agile, and they're advocating DA as a path towards agility. But again, remember, it's a toolkit, not a method. And I can tell you for a fact, even within PMI, there is debate around, are we competing with SAFe or are we not competing with SAFe? There's a faction that says, oh yeah, we're competing directly with SAFe, and there's a faction that says, no, that's stupid. We're not doing that. So even PMI is a little schizophrenic on how they position this and how they want to market it. So plenty more to come from PMI on Disciplined Agile. I know they're redoing a lot of the certifications as well around it. So this will continue to evolve, and maybe it'll make a little more sense, because the certifications, I'm a DA Senior Scrum Master. Scrum Master is a Scrum term, not an Agile term. So right off the bat, you're like, wait, Scrum because you're a Scrum Master. So they know they have kind of a branding problem and a taxonomy problem inherent in the tool right now.
Right. Do they advocate? I mean, this isn't necessarily user stories. Like, do they advocate for that? Or well, you mentioned the customer, you can or cannot have the customer voice, but do they have a similar concept to user stories?
Yeah, it actually, I remember seeing that intake work. They do. I know I saw user stories like at the very top of one of the goals here, one of the factors. But yeah, it absolutely is. Explore scope. Let's try that. Here, look, user story. Explore usage. So Epic, user story map. So here's some stuff we're more familiar with, right? Personas, unified modeling language, use cases, but there's user story. And I don't think this is the only place that user story is in. Again, it's a choice. I think it pops up as a choice on some other factors as well, some other process goals as well. But yeah, you can see a lot of that here. Acceptance criteria, explicit list, technical stories, they list as an option.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so there'll be some familiarity out here with just common Agile practice. But again, you're meant to make choice, not be told to do.
Depending on the context. Very flexible, not disciplined.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
I guess free love Agile was taken. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, so it is kind of like, hey, do whatever you want, but there is form and structure to this, and how you intend to use it. You're kind of are formalizing your way of working and documenting your way of working, which is nice. But the choice, the agility is inherent in here. You're not locked into anything, but you are meant to make choices and kind of commit to try that at least. All right.
Great. I'm going to stop the recording, but that doesn't need to stop the discussion.